I'm Mark Ambrose, the Minister of Witham United Reformed Church, the church in the High Street in Witham.
And how has lockdown and all the restrictions as a result of COVID-19 be for you?
Well, it's been a real challenge, a different challenge than we normally face. Obviously, as a minister, I can't visit anybody or do any pastoral work so much. It's more to do with producing things online and speaking to people over the phone or on Zoom. So it's much more of a technical job now than perhaps I'm used to.
What's been the toughest part of lockdown and social distancing restrictions?
The toughest part for me, being a kind of a pastor, or a very tactile type of character, is of course I can't visit anybody, I can't speak to anybody in that way. I have to do it on the phone or through Zoom, but normally I'd be there, I'd give them a hug, just a touch on the hand or whatever says so much, whereas on the phone, when I'm speaking on the phone, it's not very easy to convey that kind of care. I guess very personally, my wife died 5 months ago after a short battle with cancer, and that's been a real challenge, because at a time when I've wanted people around me to support me, I've just been sitting alone in my home. That's not been ideal.
How do you cope with that? How do you cope with that grief on your own?
That's a good question, and I haven't always coped very well. There are some days when I just stay in bed, or I just cry. I continue to look at the photos of us together or of her. But there are other days when I get up and strangely everything seems all right, and I can get on with doing work in a normal fashion. It's very up and down.
What's been particularly challenging for your congregation, for members of your congregation, without being too specific?
A lot of people in the congregation are struggling. Some are struggling with loneliness, being on their own, especially as a lot of their children live a long way away, and it's a long way to come just to speak to someone at the door. But equally, larger families are struggling, and they would actually quite like some time on their own. So I think there's different struggles depending on your circumstance.
Do you think people value different things now to how they did pre-COVID-19?
I think people certainly value relationships a whole lot more. A number of people have contacted me and talked about the fact that for the first time they're sitting down with their children playing on the ground outside, or that their husband and wife have started talking together properly for the first time. So I think there's been a lot of good come out of this.
Has anyone asked you to explain this away in a religious fashion, why God is letting this happen? Yes.
Early on, I really felt there was quite a pressure for me to say something about this, because some people were saying, is this God's judgment on us? But largely, that question hasn't been on the forefront of most people's thinking, for the simple reason that people know where it came from. They know that it came from China, they know it was an accident, they know that somehow it's come across the seas and it's affecting us. So people haven't been blaming God for it. But I really felt I wanted to stress that this is a man-made thing and not what God's willing for us, what he wants for each one of us.
And what advice do you give people on coping? Have you found coping mechanisms yourself that you can pass on?
Yeah, one of the biggest things I've found in coping is just simple prayer. And I now, perhaps more than ever, value my early mornings, where I can read my Bible and I can pray and I can think and I can meditate. And I find those times really valuable. And obviously normally with life so full, that was cut down almost to nothing for a while. But now with the time, it's been a real help.
How do you think the future looks? How do you think we come out of this?
The future is very uncertain. I think people are ringing me up, some of my congregation are ringing me up, and they are very concerned for the future. They can't see an end to it and are getting extremely depressed. It's all to do with this vaccine, and if there is a vaccine come out fairly shortly, I think everybody will be overjoyed, and nobody more so than me, because at the moment I'm having to face an awful lot of phone calls from people who are just at their wits' end.
Do you ever feel desperate?
I have felt desperate on several occasions. Everything together, it's not as if it's just one thing. Put everything together, and at times you do wonder what's going to happen next. But the good thing is, the one thing that's kept me going through this is my simple faith in a God who loves us. And I do believe that we will come through this, and I do believe that we will come out of it as better people, all of us.
In addition to that faith, where do you get your support from? Who backs you up when you're backing up your congregation and your community?
I guess I hope God is. I think God's on my side. Although many people, including me, are struggling through this time, there are so many positives that are coming out of it. And the things that we most feared are turning out to be things of great advantage to us. So no, I'm not fearful through this. I'm faithful and confident that we are going to come out and see better things.